It is our final solo shot of the 2020 MLB DFS season, and there is no more fitting way to go out than with the slate involving Yu Darvish. Darvish is starting for tonight, and you will be shocked to learn he is my number one pitcher. So let's dive on in and close out this 2020 season on a very on-brand note. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday night's 9-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. We have the solo shot today, our MLB DFS Q&A later today, and then MLB DFS stuff done for the year. You're on the FanDuel Podcast Network and the FanDuel YouTube page. Obviously, you can still play playoff slates over on FanDuel, but I got to shift focus over to football. So final one for this year, but I think we're going out on a pretty high note because the pitching selections for today, both in the high range and in the value range, pretty good. So let's take a look at what we have here. But first, we do have to let you know that there is only one game with a temperature below 70 degrees. That is in Oakland for the A's and the Mariners. I would downgrade hitters there. Everybody else pretty good. So I think we should be set for a fun slate. Our FanDuel Podcast Network Listener League is back for week number 3 in the NFL. It is a rake-free contest, so FanDuel gets no money out of this. All the entries go right back to you, the listeners. It's a $5 entry with a maximum of 3 entries per person. There are just 400 seats, so make sure you get yourself entered early to ensure your spot. To get yourself entered, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That's FanDuel.com/league/listener league. FanDuel.com/league/listener league, or you can also get a link to it by looking at the podcast landing page for the Week 3 NFL Preview Podcast, which is now posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Eligibility restrictions apply. So go to numberFire.com, check out the Week 3 preview post, click the link there, or go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. As mentioned, our Week 3 preview podcast is posted. It's Brandon Gadula and me talking about the potential value running backs, if they have enough juice to be viable for DFS, the games we want to stack, and so much more. So go check that out. Also, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time today, we'll have our snake draft live on air once again. That's the JJ Zach Racing, Brandon Gadula, and me. 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll follow that right up with our MLB DFS Q&A. We'll also take some questions about Week 3 in the NFL, particularly talking about the main DFS slate. We can dabble in other things as well. So make sure you tune in at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate, Yu Darvish, you guessed it, is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel at $11,200, followed by Carlos Carrasco at $10,800. Clayton Kershaw is $9,700. Jose Barrios at $9,200. Andrew Heaney, Chris Bassett, Tyler Mahle, Brad Keller, and Sandy Alcantara are the others at $8,000 or higher. So a lot of mid-range guys for tonight. Now, the Cubs have kept Darvish's pitch count pretty high of late, and that's a big thing for me because we're in the final weekend of the season. Some teams have nothing to play for. So I want to focus on teams that have something on the line and try to focus on them, because if they have nothing to play for, they're probably not going to let their pitchers go the full length. The Cubs still have not clinched the NL Central, and thus they've not clinched home field for the first round, because we'll probably see the NL West get the second, the non-division winning home field. They probably want to play at Wrigley, so I would expect they have Darvish on a relatively full leash right here. And as a result, I think he is the top arm of the night. I know, it's a shocker that Yu Darvish is our number one pitcher, but it's for a good reason. It's because Darvish has been filthy all year long. There have been some setbacks recently where he's allowed some runs to score, and it's likely because Darvish has started to allow more hard contact. Over the past 6 starts, we've seen Darvish throwing a wipeout pitch more often. I call it a wipeout because it could be a slider, could be a cutter, could be both, could be nothing. I don't know. It's a wipeout pitch. He's been throwing it more often in his past 6 starts, and slider-type pitches often can get hit pretty hard, and we've seen that happen with Darvish. In his past 6 starts, his hard hit rate is up to 38%, which is the highest number on tonight's main slate. So there is more risk here with Darvish now than there was previously, but it has not stopped him from putting up really big point totals in DFS. He has scored 50 or more FanDuel points in half of those 6 starts. He was at 33 or more in all 6. So the floor is really good. The upside obviously really good, and that's what we want out of our pitcher. The strikeouts give you a lot of flexibility. He has a 34% strikeout rate in this 6-start sample, which is the highest on the slate by 6 percentage points for each pitcher's most relevant sample. Darvish has had 7 or more strikeouts in all 6 games. He had double digits twice, and one of those double-digit games was against this very same White Sox team. Now, the White Sox are a great offense, and they're not one we want to target all that often in DFS, but they also do strike out at a 26% clip. So there is risk here for sure, so I don't think you need to have Darvish at the top of your list. I think that there are other routes we can definitely go, but for me, given the strikeout upside he possesses, given the fact that I would expect him to have a pretty full leash tonight, I think he's going to be my number 1, but you have more leeway to pivot if you want. So let's talk about some other pivot spots here, starting off with another higher salary guy. That's Carlos Carrasco. Cleveland is another team that has clinched a playoff spot, but they can still improve their seeding with some wins this weekend. I think they might still have an outside chance at getting that number 4 seed. So there's some motivation here, and they may want to avoid playing one of the top teams. So I think they've got motivation to go all out. So I'm on board using Carlos Carrasco here. And a big part of that comes from the matchup. Carrasco is facing the Pirates. The Pirates have played really hard. They were good against the Cubs the past couple of days and disrupted some pitching spots that I had. So they're definitely not laying down, which is a big credit to them for that. But it's still a matchup that I want to target because the Pirates have a 61 WRC plus against righties with a 26% strikeout rate. They don't hit that many fly balls, so I think the floor is pretty good for Carrasco. It does help that he's pitching really well right now. For most Cleveland pitchers, you want them to throw fewer four-seam fastballs, not more, because they're a weird team where basically all their guys have bad fastballs. But Carrasco has been going the opposite way recently. He's been throwing more four-seamers in his past 6 starts. But for him, that's actually not a bad thing because it's come at the expense of his sinker, not his off-speed stuff. And it's worked out pretty well. Carrasco in that time with fewer sinkers as a 3.80 skill interactive ERA with a 27% strikeout rate. And the reduced sinker usage seems to have helped the bad walk issue that he had earlier in this season. His walk rate is 7% in this time. It was in the double digits before this stretch. And that was kind of the one issue we had with Carrasco was the walks. Those are no longer as big of an issue. He is also allowing just a 27% hard hit rate. So like Darvish, Carrasco is someone who could be really good when he's out there. And it gives us flexibility even if he does exit a bit early. Because again, the Cubs and Cleveland have both clinched a playoff spot. So good motivation, not the best motivation. But I do think that both these guys should have long enough leashes for us to feel good about them. I prefer Darvish. I think the strikeout upside is better for him, but Carrasco is a solid number 2 in a really good matchup. And if you want to put Carrasco over Darvish, I think that is totally defensible and okay. The value arm for tonight is going to be a guy we stacked against earlier in the year. That's Jay Happ against the Marlins. And yes, I am very surprised by this as well because Happ was pretty rough early on. He had just 6 strikeouts in his first 3 starts, and the Yankees basically skipped him a couple of times in the rotation, which is generally not a good sign. But back on August 29th, we saw Happ start throwing his sinker more often. He had been around a 16% usage on that pitch to open the season, and he's been around 25% since. That's a pretty big deviation in his pitch mix, but it's been working out really well for him. In those 5 starts, Happ has a 3.09 skill interactive ERA. Let me say that again. 3.09 skill interactive ERA with a 28% strikeout rate and a 3% walk rate. He is also letting up hard contact just 31% of the time with a 49% ground ball rate. Happ has had some big individual games in that time as well. He had 10 strikeouts in one. He had 9 strikeouts in another, and that 9 strikeout game was across 8 shutout innings. Now he faces the Marlins. They're not a great matchup. They've actually been pretty good against lefties so far this year, but they don't make a ton of hard contact or hit a ton of fly balls. So I think Happ can do well here. It also does help that the Yankees, like Cleveland, like Chicago, have something to play for. They are fighting with Cleveland and the White Sox for home field in the first round of the playoffs. And that does matter. So I would bet they let him go here. We've been seeing that recently for Happ. He's gone 113 pitches in 2 of his past 3 outings. So Hap looks like a different guy right now, and we can get him for just $7,400. I really do like Darvish. I like Carrasco, and we'll talk about another high-ish salary pitcher in things to watch, but I don't always want to use value arms. Like sometimes I'll just, focus on the high salary guys. But tonight, I actually will. I think Hap has been good enough to warrant that, even on a slate with a lot of really good names. So although the lower salaried guy is an obligatory spot here on the solo shot, I am actually recommending Hap. It's not just because of where his salary is. I think he's actually a legitimately good play. So J Hap, turning tables and making us feel good about him in his final start of the regular season. Let's go down to the stacks. And one of the other advantages of J Hap is that he allows you to stack the Atlanta Braves. And the Braves have been a hyper profitable stack for us recently. They're facing Chris Mazza tonight. I think that profitability streak could continue, and Hap is someone who can allow you to stack this team. Mazza's bounced back and forth between the bullpen and the rotation this year, and he's made 5 starts with 8 total appearances. We've seen him struggle pretty much in both roles. He has a 5.40 ERA for the season with a 5.08 skill interactive ERA when you combine his numbers between the bullpen and the rotation, and he's just not getting enough strikeouts for his batted ball numbers. As a starter, the strikeout rate for Mazza is 17%. You can get by with that if you have a great batted ball numbers, specifically if you're keeping the ball on the ground, but the ground ball rate from Mazza is just 36%. It's led to a 5.89 ERA as a starter. Now he has to face one of the best offenses in the league. The Braves against righties have a 133 WRC plus, that is tops in the league. They have a 38% hard hit rate and a 39% fly ball rate. So if you can get to their salaries, the Braves are a tremendous option, and I'd put them first. That's another motivation, as I said, for going down to J Hap as your starter for tonight. If you're using Darvish and Carrasco, it's not as easy to get to the Braves, but I think that you can sit in the middle of the order here. You got Travis d'Arnaud. Adam Duvall is $3,200. He has a 58% fly ball rate against righties, so you might not be able to go here with Darvish unless you go nuts with your second stack, but I would like to get exposure to Atlanta in this spot, and they're my top stack for the Hap lineups. I'd like to try to get there with Darvish, and I think that we'll see what the value plays wind up being later today. But I do think that it's something I would at least give a shot to. And one team that can help you pair Darvish with the Braves might actually be Darvish's teammates with the Chicago Cubs. And they've been struggling quite a bit for the past month or so. And they're facing Dylan Cease, who continues to defy logic, regression, math, everything. But I do think that the Cubs are the second best process play on the board tonight. So here we go. We're stacking against Dylan Cease again. What could go wrong? Because at first glance, Cease looks solid. He has a 3.52 ERA for the full season, and you will certainly take that if you're the White Sox, especially for such a young pitcher. But the peripherals here are not good. He has a 5.97 skill interactive ERA for the full season. His strikeout rate is 17% with a 14% walk rate. You can understand overperforming peripherals by a bit. Like if a guy has a 3.50 ERA, 4.50 skill interactive ERA, okay, we could definitely understand that. But what Cease is doing right now is nuts. He's overperforming his peripherals by 2.5 runs, and that's really tough. So what we have to ask ourselves is it's a tough question. Do we value over 11 starts? What do we value more? Do we value the results, or do we value the peripherals? Over 5 starts, that's a pretty easy question to answer. There, you're going to give me the peripherals every single time. Over 11 starts, it gets a little bit tougher. I am still going to trust the peripherals here. He's currently stranding 82% of runners on base, which is just a crazy number. And he doesn't do a great job of limiting hard contact. So it feels like eventually this will come back to bite Dylan Cease. And that's why I am willing to use the Cubs tonight. I just have to hope it doesn't keep biting us to go against the results here with Cease. Chris Bryant's banged up again, which has forced the Cubs to kind of juggle their lineup around. They were also without Ian Happ yesterday because he sprained his ankle. So I hope Happ gets back in there because he is a really solid play here. The old staples we've talked about several times in the podcast, Jason Hayward, Kyle Schwarber, they've been good. We've also seen Cameron Maybin hitting higher in the order. I'm still skeptical of the peripherals here, but he's $2,200, been hitting 5th quite a bit recently, even against righties. So it's kind of hard to argue with that. So the Cubs work for me, even with some things working against them here. I would see where the value pops up with the Cubs, but I think, I know it seems weird. I know that they've been struggling, but I think they actually are the best value stack of the night, given the number of lower salary guys they have at the table. So hopefully we get Maben in there just because he's such a good salary saver. That would make getting to Darvish with some Braves exposure a whole heck of a lot easier. So the Cubs have value plays, and I think that they're a good team to lean on when you're trying to find the salary for Darvish or Carrasco. Another team that's kind of in the middle range is the Astros, and I know they've tormented us this year. They tormented us last night by doing well in a weird matchup, but I do think it's a good time to stack them here. They're facing Kyle Cody, who is another guy with a pretty big disconnect between his results and his peripherals. He has a 1.53 ERA for the season, but his skill interactive ERA is 5.06. Whereas Cease, though, was over 11 starts. For Cody, it's over 17 and 2/3 innings. There, I am much, much, much more willing to just trust the peripherals over the results. Cody has made 4 starts so far. He hasn't allowed more than 1 run in any of those, and one of those starts was against this very same Houston offense. It kind of seemed like he may have gotten a bit lucky in that specific game because of the 11 balls in play he allowed, 5 had an exit velocity of 95 miles per hour or better, according to Baseball Savant. So I don't think you should usually expect good results when something like that happens. You allow a lot of hard hit balls and allow a good number of balls in play, you're probably not going to allow just 1 run each time. As a starter, Cody has a 20% strikeout rate with a 13% walk rate. His hard hit rate is 37%. And as you all know, the Astros are not a great offense anymore, but they showed they could touch up Cody a bit in that first game by making hard contact there. And now they get to see him for the second time in 3 starts. So I don't feel great about it, and I would put the Astros for sure below the Braves and the Cubs for tonight, but I do think that regression could come for Cody in this spot. And if it does, the Astros will grade out as being a really good stat. Now, the problem is that the Astros don't have a lot of good value plays. We've got Yuli Gurriel and Carlos Correa. They seem like they're like allergic to extra base hits right now, so I actually don't hate the idea of using Josh Reddick instead. He's $2,400. He's likely to bat 8th, but he's shown more power than those guys recently, so I can get behind it. Jose Altuve and Michael Brantley are both pretty easy to get in. I'm on board with Kyle Tucker for sure. So it's not fun to stack the Astros, and it's not fun to use a guy who doesn't have name value like Josh Reddick, who's batting lower in the order. But I think that in this specific situation, on this specific slate, I'm going to do it. So I think the Astros are actually a pretty good option for tonight, and I will use them against my better judgment. Things to watch for Friday night. One other pitcher I am at least considering tonight is Jose Berrios. He's at home against the Reds, and Berrios is kind of like Jay Happ. He got a season on track by using a sinker more often. He's had 5 starts with his sinker usage up, and in that time, his hard hit rate is down to 27%. He's had a couple of 8 strikeout games in that time, and now he gets to throw at home. And Berrios is one of those guys who does tend to do better there than on the road. I would rank Berrios below Happ and the others, but I do want to consider him here. I think that Berrios is probably number 4 for me. He's ahead of Clayton Kershaw, whose strikeout rate has been down a bit recently with the velocity coming back to earth a bit. He's also facing a low strikeout team in a spot where the Dodgers really don't need a win. So I would say Berrios number 4. It's Darvish 1, Carrasco 2, Happ 3, Berrios 4 for tonight. I don't usually advocate for individual one-offs here because my process revolves so much around stacking, but I think I kind of want to use Willie Calhoun tonight. This is like the regression-focused podcast because we're talking about regression for Dylan Cease and Kyle Cody. Calhoun could regress as well, but in the positive sense, he is only $2,100, likely to bat second. The results have been hideous, like legitimately awful. He has a negative WRC plus for the season against righties, but he also does have a 40% hard hit rate and a 47% fly ball rate. If you look at his Baseball Savant data and his expected WOBA, it doesn't look very good either, but batting second against Jose Urquidy, who hasn't looked good since coming back, I kind of want to go here. So I'm going to go at Willie Calhoun and kind of see what happens. But if you need more help getting Darvish and Carrasco, I would check him out. I'd prefer Maben if Maben is batting 5th or 6th again, but Calhoun definitely works, so we'll see what happens. Finally, I am okay with stacking the Red Sox against Kyle Wright. Wright has looked good since coming back from the alternate site. He has been bringing down the walk rate. It's been more manageable recently, and that was kind of the big thing for him earlier in the year, but it's also just a 3-start sample since his most recent re-promotion, and the Red Sox still have some decent hitters here, so I'm on board with going back to right tonight. I just think that with the salaries for the Red Sox, they do need to be lower on our list because I prefer the Cubs and the Braves among teams that have some studs. I prefer the Astros too. So just shoving the Red Sox down our list because they don't give us a lot of value and I like them less than the other teams we have available for tonight. That is all the time that we have for today and for this season on the Solo Shot. So want to give you a big thank you all day or all season for tuning in. I know it's been a weird year with all the COVID stuff, with a shortened season, but thank you for sticking it through with us for this entire year. We will be back next year, so looking forward to that. And a lot of good stuff still going down on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page. We have our PGA, NFL, NASCAR, UFC podcasts all going on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And, of course, Tom Vecchio will be back with the NBA podcast once the NBA regular season starts back up later in 2020 or in early 2021. So make sure you are subscribed. And if you listened all year, liked what you heard, maybe won some money, make sure you leave a rating and review as well, because those do help us out a ton. Snake Draft Q&A is at 3:30 Eastern time today. That's over on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages. And we'll talk some MLB DFS at 4 p.m. So make sure you check out that as well. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, who's been with us for almost every single one of these solo shots this year. Thank you, Cal. As always, you are a rock star for sticking with us for all of these. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, not just today, but for this entire season. Good luck, not only today, but also this weekend and in the playoffs. And we'll talk to you again in 2021. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.